finish the monster manual, so I wanted to just plan what D&D content I was going to do next. Maybe throw in some new bits like continuing with Vampire, continuing to do the odd book video, as well as some new content as well, but sort of still trying to stick with the general theme here. But I am back today, filming for Sunday, so we are back on track. I've also managed to film a couple more monster manual videos, so that'll be coming out next. I'm really looking forward to getting back into those. So without further ado, I am kicking off 2026 with a review of what I read in 2025. Now, since I have a full-time job, I have a home life, a social life, various social engagements, quizzes I go to, hoop classes I go to. I've got this channel which I started last year. I have had less time to read, so the fact that I was able to read 40 books in 2025 is fantastic. I am super happy with that. So let's kick off in a rough order of when I read them. Any series I have grouped together just for ease though. So let's get into it. So the first book that I read in 2025 was the second book of this. It's not an anthology. It's a conglomeration. It's not. I know what the word is, but we'll go with collection. With this collection of Dragonlance books. I read Dragons of Autumn Twilight in 2024, so in 2025 I read Dragons of Winter Night and Dragons of Spring Dawning. So this is a meaty one because it is all three of those books. This is partly a read for joy and partly a read for research. Our D&D campaign is set in the world of Dragonlance, so many years after these books take place. So whilst we're in Curse of Strahd, I'm trying to finish all the ones and sort of get caught up to roughly where we are in the game, just because we're going to plant this next, and I don't want to walk in and there be some huge monument to Tas because he died. And though I have said that if Tas dies at any point, I'm not reading anymore. He is my favourite character. He needs to be protected. That's all I'll say. So I did read those, and I did start a Time of the Twins, which we're currently still reading. I read these with my partner. They're his favourite book series, and we basically take it in turns to read a chapter at night when we're in bed. But most of the time when he's reading, I do fall asleep. So it does take us multiple attempts to get through one chapter. So it's taking a while to get through these. The next three books that I read are kind of a similar genre. They're very sort of like dark urban fantasy. So the first one was In These Hallowed Halls, which was an anthology, a dark academia anthology. I haven't read a lot of dark academia. This was kind of my introduction, but this was brilliant. I will definitely be rereading that. Some of the short stories in this were wonderfully dark and creepy. Some were funny. I just thought this was a great anthology, and I am a bit of a sucker for an anthology. The next one was Spells for Forgetting by Adrian Young. This wasn't quite what I expected. I expected more spells, not gonna lie, but I still enjoyed it. Kind of still that urban fantasy. There was less fantasy in tops. It was so well done. Really, really well written as well. And then I read A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. I had seen this one on TikTok. It was sold to me as, let me get this right, Peaky Blinders meets vampires, meets Six of Crows Found Family, and it did not disappoint. I got this gorgeous sprayed edged version, absolutely wonderful. I loved the different characters. Found Families are, I think, a really enjoyable read because when done right, like this was, and like Six of Crows is, you get a really nice mix of different personalities, different abilities, and so you get a lot of different voices in the book, and I love that about this. I loved the heist aspect. I loved our main character. She was absolutely wonderful. Just brilliant. This is the part where, because I'm sat on the floor, on my feet, sort of knelt, I start getting pins and needles, and I have to just sit on my butt for a few minutes while I get the feeling back. Join me on the floor with excruciating pins and needles. In keeping with the dark academia genre which I was introduced to last year and very much enjoyed, we have A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. And I got this beautiful edition with the books on the edges. I really enjoyed this. Again, not quite what I was expecting, but the prose of this book was stunning. I really like books that sort of read as slightly poetic, and this was absolutely beautifully written. Again, really intriguing, a nice mystery. It wasn't as the culmination of the mystery wasn't quite what I would have liked, but very, very clever. I loved the world. It was kind of urban. It was almost like a parallel universe kind of thing. But a really, really lovely book. I'm not quite sure why I keep doing these in sets of 3, but I have picked up another 3. So the next one is probably one of the more recognisable, famous books that I read last year, and that is Terry Pratchett, The Colour of Magic, a Discworld novel. This was my first introduction to Terry Pratchett. a long read because it's all written in that sort of poetry prose style. Just a little bit haunting. It was just beautiful. In stark contrast, once again, we have Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce. I'd gone in the mood for something very different, for something lighter and funner and a little bit less sort of heavy, I guess. And this was definitely it. I didn't expect this to be as good as it was. Now, as good to me, bearing in mind that doesn't necessarily mean it's amazing to everybody, but I loved this. I thought it was all written. I enjoyed the progression of the story, the interactions of the characters. I mean, I kind of had to read it. It had board games on the front, which, speaking of which, I loved that, like, they had really obvious, like, Ticket to Ride here. I think down here is Settlers of Catan and code names here, which I thought was really fun. And it's about, you know, Dungeons and Dragons. And it's about dating the DM. That's my life. Well, secretly dating the DM in this one, which I enjoyed. That can be a bit of a hit and miss trope for me, in the secretly dating, because you know what's coming at the end, but that didn't take away from the enjoyment for me. Very good light read. At this point, I was introduced to, or reintroduced to, a few like Japanese translations. So a friend for my birthday got me the Kamigawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwa. That was lovely. All of these Japanese retellings are very cozy, very low stakes, really, really just warm reads. This one was absolutely beautiful. I don't have my copy of the next one because I've given it to the friend that bought me this, but I'll pop a cover of it here. I read the Full Moon Detectives, and again, off the top of my head, I can't remember who wrote that one, but it will be here. And that one, I think that one was my favourite. I really do. It was very celestial, which is kind of my thing, all about astrology and things, so that was really charming. And then in the autumn, I read The Vanishing Cherry Blossom Bookshop by Takuya Asakura, which I mentioned in my autumn wrap-up December TBR video. Again, so charming, really on brand for me, with it being a bookshop. Just warm and cozy and lovely, really heartwarming is what I would say about these. Definitely recommend. I'm slightly lower now because I've started getting a horrendous cramp in my feet. Next up, and I believe this was my first reread of the year, I had made myself a goal of reading more new books than rereading already read books, and I'm just watching the cat try and get up on this windowsill, which I actually managed. I was really, really proud of myself for that. Very proud. So I started a reread of the Throne of Glass series. This is Crown of Midnight, but I also started with Throne of Glass, and I interspersed those with some of the short stories from Assassin's Blade. I have not yet finished my reread of this because it became autumn, and I had so many autumn reads that I wanted to get through. So I read Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, as well as some of the short stories of Assassin's Blade. This is my favourite of Sarah J. Maas's series. I think it's her best written. I don't think particularly highly of the others anymore, though I do plan to do a reread eventually of the ACOTAR series. series just to see if my mind has changed. It's been a few years since I read that or reread it. I've read it a couple of times. But Throne of Glass is absolutely wonderful. It's complex, the world building is brilliant, all of the characters are so individual, how everything ties together. I cannot speak highly enough about this series. So after finishing Crown of Midnight and entering the autumn cozy season, I really wanted to reread a series I'd read as a kid. I've reread the films and they do hold a special place in my heart, but they are not very good at all. Again, we're entering the part where I spoke about these books in my autumn wrap-up, so I won't spend too much time on these, but I did read or reread the entire Twilight series. I had the same opinion of them now as I did back then, that they are not very good. They aren't very well written. I don't like the three main characters. I think a lot of it can be taken out. I don't approve of Edward. I don't approve of Jacob. The best character is Rosalie and Charlie. They are the best characters. But they did give me autumn cozy vibes, not gonna lie. So it wasn't a waste effort, but I am secure in my belief that these are not very good. I only had the opinion of my 14-year-old self, which is almost 19 years ago. So I've reaffirmed my correct opinion. I also read The Baby Dragon Cafe by A.T. Qureshi in my autumn cozy period. Again, did not enjoy it. I think this is the last one that I didn't enjoy, to be fair. It was awful as far as I'm concerned. I understand that it's very low stakes when it comes to cozy fantasy, but there still needs to be a plot. I didn't enjoy this. I don't think there was a plot. The characters were not believable in and of themselves, let alone the romance between them. Any of the sort of drama and conflict in the book was resolved literally a sentence later. I had such high hopes for this book and I didn't enjoy it one bit. It has just occurred to me that I've skipped a bunch of books because I don't have them physically. They are on my Kindle. So I went on holiday in the summer, so we're backtracking a little bit. And the first book that I read, or that I completed on holiday, was The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. Adored this. This was the epitome of cozy fantasy. The plot wasn't quite low stakes. I thought it was a little bit more than that, but perfect, absolutely perfect. I loved the main characters. They were wonderful. They all really complemented each other. And I believe I blitzed this in about 2 days while lying next to a pool in the sunshine, or in the shade. I don't lie in the sunshine. I cover myself, in fact, to 50 and lie in the shade. Whilst on that holiday, I did read The Courage to Be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi. It's not displaying the front cover like it normally does, but it took me most of the second half of the year to finish this book. and I think I am better for it. Next up, I read Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh. It's a really dark cover, so I don't know if you can see that at all. This was a short story. Really loved it. It was like a dark contemporary fantasy, so urban fantasy, I guess. Really charming, really intriguing. I adored this. I'm trying to think of descriptive words for it, but dark, mysterious, and charming are the ones that mostly come to mind. I then read two books that were very, very similar. So the first one was The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell, which was basically a murder mystery set during a cooking competition like Bake Off. I loved that. I am never very good at guessing the endings of books. I definitely didn't guess the ending of that. I think towards right at the end I had an inkling, but I definitely didn't see it coming from afar off, and I only got it half right anyway. Really enjoyed this. I like murder mysteries with a gimmick. It's why I like a lot of Agatha Christie's books, Murder on the Orient Express. I can't even, for some reason, the ABC Murders, Death on the Nile, all of that good stuff. I like a murder mystery with a gimmick, so I liked that this was a murder mystery set at a baking competition, and it was really good. Really enjoyed it. And the last one that I read was on holiday, which I cannot find anywhere. It's not on my Kindle. It's not on my Kindle app. So I don't know if I read it as a guest, maybe, but I definitely read it on my Kindle. So I'll pop it here, and that is A Fellowship of Bakers, which, again, a cooking competition-based book, but set in a fantasy world. It was lovely. I had certain issues with certain choices that were made towards the end of that book. Certain opinions and issues that the character was having, I took issue with. There was just a few tropes that were introduced at the end that I didn't enjoy. But overall, really charming, really intriguing. I loved all of it, and I would highly recommend it. Back to my autumn cozy reads. After the disaster that was the Baby Dragon Cafe, I read Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman, which I adored. 100% one of my favourite books of the year. I adore the film, and I really enjoyed reading the book, seeing the differences between the two, and there were quite a few differences in the characters, in the plot, but really wonderful, charming, mysterious. The characters were brilliant. I was glad I finally read the book version of this. And then I followed that up with another favourite of mine last year, and that is A Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. I really like her books. I've read a few of them over the years, but I was drawn to this purely for the fact that I am playing a paladin in our current D&D campaign, an Asimov paladin, which I've mentioned a few times. This was so intriguing. I'm just double checking that. So, one of the things I found really intriguing about this is the paladin's god has died, and one of the first things that you read is him experiencing that happening, and then we sort of fast forward a year or two. I think it's a year. And I have never If so, which ones? And if so, why? So seeing gods, a pantheon of gods as that, you understand that religion is a fact. Gods exist in this world. It's just whether you support them, whether you give them your support, and if you are a class that is connected to a god, why have you chosen that god? Why have they chosen you? That kind of thing, which is very helpful, by the way, as a non-religious person. But that I found fascinating, and to be reading that as that's the first thing you read, is the main character immediately experiencing the death of his god and how that affects him. Chef's kiss. Wonderful. Another kind of grumpy sunshine. It is a favourite trope of mine. This was fucking wonderful. I have the second one on my shelf. I can see it in my mirror, but I can't see it in the camera. Paladin Strength. Wonderful, beautifully written. The mystery was so intriguing. The characters worked so well together. That's my cat jumping off the windowsill. Yeah, can't recommend this one enough. I read 2 books for spooky season. Again, I covered these ones and the next ones in my autumn wrap-up December TBR. Is Strange Pictures by Uketsu. The chilling Japanese mystery sensation. Again, another brilliant book. It's basically 4 individual stories that all connect, and the author uses the medium of pictures to tell the story. So some of them are like police's sort of sketches and pictures. Some of them are kids' drawings. Some of them are a pregnant lady's drawings. I thought it was so unique. I have got his other one. Again, it's here somewhere. Strange Houses. Really looking forward to reading that. This was brilliant, really quite creepy. And the last one I read for spooky season was The Ghosts of Merry Hall by Heather Davey. This one I didn't enjoy as much, however, incredibly atmospheric. I did enjoy the story. It just wasn't quite as scary as I wanted it to be. I find it quite difficult to be spooked by horror books. I'm a sort of no-sleep person. I don't know if any of you have been on the no-sleep Reddit. Some of those are goddamn terrifying, like keep me up at night terrifying. And I wanted this to be that, but it wasn't, and I don't think it was advertised as that, to be honest. It was advertised as scary, but it wasn't for me. But it was very atmospheric. think is perfect. I like to be able to figure it out, and I think a lot of the time that's the author's intention as well, because it means you've drip-fed the mystery perfectly. But this was brilliant. It really gave those like Christmas vibes, but whilst also being really mysterious. Yeah, absolutely loved this one. Weirdly perfect for the Christmas holiday. I then did my yearly reread of My True Love Gave to Me, 12 Winter Romances. Absolutely adored these stories. There's a few that I sometimes skip, but I have my regular favourites that I read every year at Christmas. Yeah, I can't say enough about this, despite the fact that I can't stand the colour pink. I have always adored this cover. I think it's beautiful. It's a really good mix of contemporary romances and some urban fantasy romances. There's some really, really good authors here. Just absolutely gorgeous. Whilst this next book is technically my last book of the year, it's not the year that I did finish off 2025 with, but as you can see on my channel, I did read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I've never read this before. I've obviously seen many of the retellings of it in movie form and TV special form. I think I was surprised by the fact that it was such a faithful adaptation. I mean, it is a very short book, so it's not like there's a lot of things that have to be cut out there, but most of the adaptations I've seen are literally word for word retellings of this book. It's a charming, it's got like the gold sprayed edges, and this is actually a reproduction of the original, so this is exactly how it was printed originally. It has like some of the original like letters and things in there, which I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed reading this for all of you. So whilst I didn't finish this one in 2025, and am in fact still reading it now, we have Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I am over halfway through now, but it is a 500-page book in my defence, and the writing is very small, like the type is very small. I love the Little Women movie. I have only seen the most recent one, with Saoirse Ronan and Florence Pugh and Emma Watson, but I loved it. Perfect for winter. It always upsets me when I watch it, but I love it and I'm really enjoying the book. I can see why this is so popular. I'm loving seeing obviously what's in the movies, but also seeing all the bits that get cut out, all the bits that get condensed. I love the way that they bring across each of the individual personalities of the sisters. So, still reading this. This is technically the first book of 2026, but did technically finish off my year with it. So that is all the books that I read in 2025. I really enjoyed most of the books that I read. I love the fact that I managed to read more new books that I own than books that I already own and have already read and I'm rereading. page that I've opened this up on, funnily enough. I don't know if I'm getting all of this in shot, actually. Oh god, the art is absolutely stunning. So I will be rereading those as